Hi, welcome back to Cubs and Culture. Probably the final section for today for February 3rd, 2018, just discussing the King's Speech. Okay, so Tom Hooper, who's the director, I think he wrung from this script, which again, I think it's a very good script. Probably the best damn movie you possibly could, and a lot of it is just, a lot of it's just subtle, well thought out direction. So one of the things about this movie is because you're trying to identify with the King of England basically being the protagonist. Hooper does a lot to limit sort of the royal trappings and makes a distinction between Bertie the man and King George the Sixth, the symbol or role he has to play. So a lot of the royal trappings are done. So the first time you meet Bertie, he's actually just dressed fancy, but he's not in a sword and a plumage or anything like that. He's sort of an everyman figure, and then also he's sort of repeatedly in the first third of the movie visually isolated, usually contrasted with just he's negative space or empty space in terms of sort of the visual construction. So this comes across, the first time you see him, it's just him against sort of a white wall, and then also in all the speech therapy scenes in the beginning, it's just the way in which that scene is staged. Bertie is isolated in that very interesting wall they found as the backdrop. So he's sort of isolated, and of course this sort of works as a visual metaphor because the thing about being a stammerer is it's very isolating. The other thing is, again, for about the first third of the movie, Bertie is often dominated in the frame by other people. So in the first scene with the non-Lionel Logue speech therapist, the camera is the speech therapist is always the dominant figure in the frame. So he's standing up, he's in the middle of the frame. When there's a close-up, it's shot from a slightly low angle, which cuts together to create dominance. So as the film goes on, or sometimes it's the camera's slightly askew, or the other thing he does is Hooper, for the first third, he uses anti-classical framing, which is for classical framing, it's always symmetrical. And people look out the long side, look at the long side of the frame. Anti-classical framing is the characters are always shifted to one side and they look out the short side of the frame. So in the first sort of third of the movie, Hooper's very doing this, and it really does help you identify with Bertie. In the movie, it very much takes sort of his subjective point of view a lot of the times, and then as the movie goes on, all these sort of tensions using anti-classical framing, Bertie being dominated in the frame, Bertie being isolated in the frame, it starts to resolve itself until you get sort of at the last moment on the balcony where it's absolutely classical framing. And Bertie or George the Sixth itself is dominating the frame, or it's very classically symmetrical, and so all those tensions, it's very subtly done. As you go through it, it gets, at the beginning he's awkward and isolated, and it gets more and more to classical, which makes him more and more like he's finding his voice, to use the sort of the metaphor of the movie, or the sort of the thing. The other sort of thing is sort of directorially, Hooper somehow managed to make speech therapy very exciting. It's mostly just an editing montage, and it doesn't come across as sort of, because of that damn Team America World Police movie with that song Montage. It's could come across as sort of parody, be parody, but it was shot in such a way that it actually works. And then the final speech, because of the sort of the free flowing camera, is very, very exciting. So, like, one of the things about him sort of directorially is not only you have these nice tensions, but there's also just sort of striking images in the film, in the way in which it's cut together. Like, he makes a speech, and it's a good speech, but he makes a guy giving a speech, while still sort of stammering, because he doesn't really overcome fully his speech impediment. Like, Hooper makes that exciting, and that's really masterful work. So I kind of wish this film won at the Oscars Picture, Director, Screenplay, Actor. I would have also given it editing, and then also for Rush and Carter. So let me kind of talk a little bit about the acting. So here's the thing. This movie, because of the way it's been built, if Colin Firth wasn't able to emote past the stammer, or with the stammer, it wouldn't have worked. And so, like, his performance as Bertie in George VI is moving in spite of his stammer, and Firth is really good at like using his eyes when he can't use his words because he's stuck on a block of with a stammer. And then the other sort of thing is, with this sort of thing, it could have been very annoying to have your main character have these blocks and not being able to talk. Also, it could have come across as very, very false, or put on. But Firth doesn't. It's very, very well structured. I'm not sure how he kept track of it. But so, like, his performance is absolutely masterful because it's an emotionally engaging performance while also having an authentic feeling stutter or stammer. I think it's his career best performance. I really, really like it. And I have to say, as a person who had to go through speech therapy, this might be why I really like this movie. There's times in which, despite that as being King of England, Firth looks absolutely terrified, and it's really profoundly moving. I mean, there's one scene right after his father's dying, he's just sort of giving information about how he was sort of abused as a child, and it's just absolutely masterful when you get a total sense of his childhood and upbringing. Okay, now with that being said, even though a lot of focusing on the acting was on Firth, Geoffrey Rush is also very, very good in this film, and I think it also is sort of his best career performance. And I have seen Shine, which is the movie he won the Oscar for, because one of the things about Geoffrey Rush is Lionel Logue, being an Australian, he had to be able to, like, one of the things this movie is basically saying is that being the King of England is playing a part, and only an Australian who's, because of the bigotry against Australians, because of, being a penal colony or whatever, cut through the crap. And so Geoffrey Rush is very, very good as Logue, because it is a sort of Rush character, but he's actually fairly understated for him. And he has sort of a quiet physicality to his performance where he really feels, because he does. He feels like a person who is he feels like a character who is aware of his body, because the character himself is concerned with sort of acting as presentation. And I really like that. And then also, because of the sort of the comedy in this, both Firth and Rush have a very good sense of timing, and a lot of the movie is very, very funny. And and they really find the humor in some of the Seidler dialogue. And then the other sort of thing for Helena Bonham Carter, the reason why I think she should have won is, again, it's sort of the challenge of, because you're dealing with royalty, how, like, you know, they are so privileged materially, like how, like why should we care? And she's absolutely royal and regal without being condescending, and she comes across as very, very caring and strong. And okay, so Helena Bonham Carter heard this phrase that the Queen's mother was like a marshmallow made with a welding machine, and like she really does nail that, and it's a really cool choice for this sort of character, and I really like their performances. So I absolutely adore this film. I think it's one of the few times the Oscars actually got it completely right, because it is such a well-polished, put-together, professional film, where a bit like Shakespeare in Love, where you can say, well, maybe it didn't have the best screenplay of the year, or maybe it wasn't the best directed film of the year, even though I think it was. Every single element of it is so professional and so well thought out and polished that the sum total of it is the total of it is more than the sum of its part. It's such a well put together, made movie on multiple fronts. Okay, so I feel like I'm just gushing at this point. So see you tomorrow. Maybe I'll talk about Javi, why I love him so much as a player. I don't know. I'll see you tomorrow. Cubs and Culture out.